Okay.
So, welcome everyone. Here we are with Zach, part one of three series of All You Want to Know About Coffee. Welcome, Zach.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So my name's Zach Tarhini. I own Meta Coffee Roasting here in town. We opened in 2015 doing like farmers markets and stuff, which is how I met Magda. And since then, we have opened a coffee shop. We sold a coffee shop. We're opening another coffee shop. We kind of focus on small batch, single origin, sustainably grown coffee. And we try to keep it as high quality and stuff as we can. We don't offer a ton of different beans. We're very small, so we try to do one or two varieties at a time as well as we possibly can. We don't generally offer light, medium, and dark roast. We just try to roast that particular bean to the best of our ability, what we think fits well for that particular bean, and try to just maintain a really high standard. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit today about farming, um, importing, roasting, kind of the stuff that you don't see on the cafe side here, and how about beans and how they get here and why farming and why roasting matters.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you. I would just like to inject you were Meta before the Meta,
I,
right?
I was Meta way before Facebook took it from me, but they have
I
better
know there
lawyers
should be
than I
some sort
do.
of a legal accommodations or something.
We've gone back and forth a lot on changing the name, and we decided not to, but yeah, it does get a
Because you
little
had
weird.
it for years and years and years.
We do. I hope it doesn't have a negative connotation to most people. I'm sure it's weird to hear it if they've not heard of us before and
I
they know.
know, and I was thinking about it too, because before when companies, like there was a lawsuit around Victor's Secret. Sometimes, did you hear about it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the usually companies do legal research before they come up with a name. Sorry to interrupt. It was
Oh
just a
no, no.
Magda joke.
Yeah, no, that's it's true. We thought about like trying, reaching out or something, but we just haven't gotten a cease and desist yet, so we're pretty happy with that. But yeah, so anyway, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with coffee in some capacity. But yeah, it's the world's most traded commodity, the world's most outside of oil, but the world's most traded consumable, and it's the world's most consumed beverage. So coffee is a big deal, and it plays a really big part in the world. It's obviously a big part of a lot of people's lives daily, and there's a lot of money behind it, which we'll talk more about here in a second. Coffee first started being consumed when a goat herder in Ethiopia, legend has it, saw goats chewing on some cherries and acting up. And he decided to see what was going on and ate some of the cherries himself and realized he got a pretty big energy kick out of it. And so they started eating it in power, kind of making like power bars with animal fats and coffee cherries and stuff like that until eventually somebody got the idea to brew the pit, which is what coffee is. It is the pit of a cherry fruit that we then roast. So really, really funny way that it kind of got here. It kind of morphed into coffee houses in the Middle East where people got together and talked philosophy, played chess, stuff like that. Some of the biggest producers in the coffee world, the countries that put out the most coffee, you'd probably expect something like Brazil. That's obvious; they're huge. One you may not expect is Vietnam. They're the second biggest producer in the world, but they pump out a lot of Robusta coffee as opposed to Arabica. So we've got two of the two varieties that you will typically find that we consume are Arabica and Robusta coffee. Arabica tends to be a little more flavorful, a little less, um, we'll say, pungent, and Robusta kind of gets mixed into a lot of the blends that you'll find in commodity grade coffee at the grocery stores, your Folgers, your Maxwell House, stuff like that. Um, then within Arabica, we have obviously a tier system where if it is graded with a cupping score above 80, that is considered specialty coffee. Anything below that 80 grade on an Arabica coffee scale is considered commodity. It tends to be more lower grade, a little bit cheaper. So generally, when you're buying from a local shop, you will be getting Arabica in some capacity. And usually, if it's a higher end shop, you'll be into the specialty grade coffee, ideally, at least. Um, yeah, and then so we'll get into farming a little bit. Um, not I don't know how familiar everyone is with coffee farming, but it is a really tough job. It's
Sorry. So
oh,
are we supposed to see PowerPoint? Is there a PowerPoint?
I did not have a PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, good, good. I was not sure if we are.
No,
So
I've
good,
got some notes here that I'm
good,
kind of
good,
going
good,
off of,
good,
and
good.
I'll take questions at the end if anybody does
Okay,
happen to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I just didn't. Sorry, I didn't know. All
Oh
right.
no, no,
Sorry, I
you're
forgot to
fine.
ask.
Totally fine. But yeah, so a lot of the coffee growing countries, a lot of them tend to be pretty poor, to say the least. So a lot of coffee farmers are they're doing a lot of this by hand. Coffee's grown on really steep hills, generally mountainous regions, and they are oftentimes weeded by hand. We've gone on a couple coffee buying trips, and we've been in Costa Rica and stuff, and we've met some of the farmers. They're generally out there hillside with machetes weeding coffees by hand. It's really tough work. It gets really muddy on downpours. They've got to transport this coffee through mountainous areas. A lot of the times you can't reach these regions in regular cars. Even when we visited, we had to kind of go through the mountains on a Polaris trying to get to the coffee farm. And a lot of the farmers live close by. It's really wild. It's up until recently, a lot of farmers didn't realize the value of their crops either. A lot of times you've had companies like Nestle, who's one of the bigger buyers in the world, um, go into coffee farms, tell these farmers their coffee is, it's fine, it's no good, offer to buy it for, $1.25 per pound or something like that, or take it or leave it, and they take it all, but really it's high grade potentially. And up until recently, where we've started making more direct trade, fair trade kind of connections, we'll get into that a little bit more in a second, but it's gotten better. We've got a ways to go. We met a farmer in Costa Rica. His name was Chevo. He was hired by the farm. He had been working this mountain for his whole life. He was 60 years old. He wanted to retire soon. He had been working there since he was 16. He had been working on this same coffee farm. It had traded hands a few times since he had been there, and we couldn't believe after we talked to him, he had never actually drank the coffee that he grew on his farm, even though he had been working there for 45, 50 years almost. He had never actually tried his own coffee. And so a lot of the times in these poor regions, they're drinking instant coffee where they're growing all of this coffee. They don't have a great way to roast it, but every bean matters. They're selling all of that. That's their livelihood. They're not keeping a supply themselves to roast and consume. They don't necessarily know what their final product tastes like. They know what's important to grow the coffee. They know good coffee is brings more money potentially, but they've never actually had it. So we were talking to him, and he had just tried his own coffee. These farmers, the people who own the farm now, they're really good people. We have a direct trade relationship with them now. They ensured that they got a roasted bag back from one of the roasters, and he tried the coffee for the first time and was in tears getting to try what he, was essentially his life's work, which was, very telling with just how disconnected we are from where the coffee comes from, and how disconnected the farmers are from the final product and what we do with it. You see a lot of the really cool branded bags and stuff like that, and you don't actually know that the amount of hands that touch that coffee to before it gets here. um, Even the picking process, whenever we're talking about picking coffee, so the best coffees in the world, you are only picking the ripest cherries, right? And so there is a season for it, and you need to go through all of the plants several times, waiting, only picking the ripest cherries on a daily basis. So you have traveling, you know, pickers who will go from farm to farm or region to region throughout Central America, potentially traveling throughout Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica, um, Guatemala, going through the seasons, and they will stay there. They'll stay at one farm for, 3 weeks, and they'll pick all the coffee, and they go around to the same trees every day, only picking the ripest coffees. Whereas, like not to pick on Nestle again, but if you're talking about one of these large scale Nestle types, they are not going through and they're picking the ripest cherries. They are just going through potentially with a machine and they are just taking all the cherries off and they're going to go use all those beans. So you're not getting this really mature flavor out of your coffee beans. By only picking the very ripest, you're ensuring that you're getting them at peak flavor, essentially. After they're picked, the next step is to be processed, and that is you have a couple of options. You may see this on coffee bags or whenever you're in the coffee aisle. It may say natural or washed on it on some of the higher end coffee, and that just means that the seed, a washed coffee is the seed or the pit is taken out of the coffee fruit and it is rinsed and then laid to dry on a patio in the sun for days at a time to dry out. Whereas a natural is dried within that fruit and then it is removed from the fruit and dried a little bit more. So you get a little bit more of that sweetness and development from the coffee fruit as it dries a little bit longer. The climate is playing a really big role on how much coffee we're getting and we're able to get right now. And our green coffee prices are skyrocketing, to say the least. It's getting pretty wild. Brazil has seen a massive decline in how much coffee they're able to put out uh, on any given year. It's lower 15 to 30% lower than usual, which means the prices that we're paying for green coffee, $3.50, $4 per pound used to be pretty exceptional for a green coffee. And now, we're getting up into the 5, 6, $7 range sometimes to get some of the better coffees imported because of the crops and how much of a harvest season, how much we're getting out of each harvest season. I'll pause just for a second. I kind of gone over a lot of different things. Does anyone have any questions or anything specific? Yeah, Magda.
You were saying like Arabica versus
Robusta?
uh Robusta. So can you grow Arabica? Is it by bushes or how? What is the difference there? Can you
Yeah,
grow Arabica even in South America?
yeah, oh yeah. So they often like this in South America, they're probably growing both. You can grow, both varieties. Um, Arabica is going to fetch more. It's Robusta is going to be a little easier. It's a little hardier. You can grow it and it kind of handles the seasons a little bit better, which you're seeing the Robusta supply go up a little bit more lately because it does handle climate differentials a little bit better. You're able to still get a pretty good harvest out of that. So you're seeing people trying to refine Robusta a little bit more and maybe get a better flavor out of Robusta. But Arabica is more delicate. So it's harder to grow, it's more sensitive, but the flavor profile is pretty superior. So, but in most places, you could grow either, but Robusta is just not going to fetch the same dollar than the Arabica
So
is.
those are different bushes, or what is the difference
Yep,
between
no, they're
those?
they're different. It's a totally different variety. It's just like
Like
talking
apple
about
and
like
pear, kind
or
of.
like a red delicious apple versus a gala apple or a
Oh, I
Fuji
see, I see, I
apple
see.
or something.
Got
So
it.
you're just the same fruits, but you're getting a totally different flavor out of it.
Oh, I see. And also, recently you hear how the prices of coffee are going up. Is it
Yeah.
because the global warming thing? Or
Yeah, yeah, it just yeah, like it's kind of touching on we're just getting less in the yields. Every year we're getting less. And especially I think South America and Central America are being hit pretty hard on this. Um, I think Vietnam and Ethiopia have been hit a little bit less, so it's affected them a little bit less. But Central and South America, you are definitely seeing entire crops sometimes not come out where they'll have drought or they will have too wet of a season where they'll get flooded and that impacts it as well. So you're seeing, if you're getting less of a crop, that's obviously going to make whatever you did grow, the price go up. And so, we are paying quite a bit more for green coffee now than what we used to. And you're probably seeing that reflected on bag prices. If you go into a local shop now, it's not that unheard of to find a bag of coffee for $18 to $25 potentially for a
per
12-ounce bag
pound? Per pound?
for not even a full pound for probably like a 12-ounce bag. Whereas, when we even just first opened in 2015, we were selling our bags for $13 and we thought that was pushing it a little bit. But it is you're definitely seeing that impacted at the
Mm.
end user for sure.
So, for example, Hawaiian Kona coffee, is it Robusta or Arabica?
They can grow both. The Kona coffee is going to be Arabica usually, and you're a lot of what you're paying for there because that is more expensive coffee. It's not
The labor,
necessarily. It's what's that?
the labor. You pay for the labor,
Right. It's not necessarily better coffee, but yeah, you're paying American, wages
wages.
as
Mm,
opposed to going to Central America and, paying a fraction of that.
mm.
So yeah, the Kona coffee is a great example. And then I forget what the name is in, Jamaica grows some coffee. I forget what they call it, but that's a similar
And then
thing.
there is the special coffee, which is fermented inside of some animals.
You're seeing a lot of novelty coffees come out. Also, not really better, but it is a novelty. And some people, you'll see that. You'll see, I don't know if you've seen flavored coffees in the store.
I don't
That's
like those, especially vanilla. Please take me out of there.
Yeah,
I
it's so
don't like
so
that.
I worked at a really big coffee roaster out of college, and they had an area where they did that, and it's essentially like a chemical flavoring that they are
Mm,
tossing with the roasted beans after they're cooled. So
mm,
it is a purely artificial flavoring coating the beans that you are
mm,
then grinding and brewing. So it's an odd thing. It's something I think that started in like the 70s or 80s, but
mm.
some people really like it. Not for me, but it
And
is a
I started drinking coffee during COVID out of total boredom. I told you we bought a bunch of different types of coffee and we were trying to figure out which one we like. And then maybe more, maybe I increase with the increased demand, the prices of coffee are going up because of me or something. I don't
Oh,
know.
sure. I think it's not you, it's coincidental. But yeah,
I know.
you're
I know.
not wrong that it is
I guess
going up.
maybe more people are drinking coffee. But also, I don't know if you will talk about it now or later about the decaffeination process.
Yeah, I was
Somebody
about
said don't drink the decaffeinated coffee because all the chemicals involved.
Sure, and there is a slightly better version of that now with there. So traditionally, decaf coffee is they use a chemical to obviously you can't grow coffee without caffeine. That is impossible. That's just
Right.
we've not been able to do that until the GMO process, catches up. Which who knows if that's something you'd want to eat anyway. But yeah, normally traditionally they use a chemical, but they have started something in the last 10, 15 years called a Swiss water process where they soak the beans in this water bath with just a little bit of a chemical that pulls out as much caffeine as possible. And there's it's kind of it's a lot softer, but it does still taste a little, to me personally, taste a little bit medicinal whenever you try decaf coffee. You can probably get used to it, but there's not a tried and true method to making a coffee decaf without some part of the chemical. The Swiss water process is the best version of that. If you drink decaf and you want to find the best version of that, try to find something that uses the Swiss water process. It's a lot softer. The aftertaste is going to be affected less, but it's really hard to not affect the flavor profile, removing the caffeine of the coffee. That's for sure.
And when you buy decaffeinated coffee, it tells on the label what process of decaffeination did they use.
Sometimes you have to look for it. If someone uses Swiss water process, it's a little bit more expensive for them to do that. So
So
they're
did
going to
they
be
advertise it?
Yeah, they'll likely advertise it somewhere. If they don't, and oftentimes commodity brands, especially, they're going to just use the quick way, which is going to be the pure
Mm-hmm.
chemical process. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
buying decaf coffee, I would recommend probably trying to pay a little bit more for it. You don't want the bottom of the barrel. If you're paying $3, $4, $5 for a large can of ground coffee, you're kind of getting what you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's another thing. And I'll get more into this into the next lecture when we get into brewing and stuff. But you can buy obviously ground or whole bean coffee at the grocery store. Whenever you can, obviously buy whole bean. Whenever you grind it and you put it into a bag, the biggest factor in your coffee quality is oxidizing the coffee. And whenever you grind it, it oxidizes very quickly. It generally is going to oxidize within a day or two, oftentimes if it's ground, whereas it'll take a couple of weeks to fully oxidize after the bag is opened from a roasted.
I have to find a better container because I buy uh, whole beans, but
Uh-huh.
then the beans are some so closed, barely closed up someplace.
I
So I
know
have to buy a better container for it.
it's but you're already a step ahead. You're using whole bean, which is that's your big
But
step.
I still don't have the $400 grinder.
You can get an excellent grinder for like $90, the Encore Baratza, any sort of burr grinder. That's going to upgrade you quite
Yeah,
a
yeah, I
bit.
don't have that.
One day. Well, save
Yeah,
up. That's
yeah,
that's the next thing. Now that you're at whole bean,
yeah,
you can move
yeah.
on. Um,
I
so yeah,
am amazed at how many like new different coffee places have popped up because now you have Swig and you have Brew 54 and you always had Starbucks. That was like
sure.
kind of the mainstay that's kind of started all this. Please tell me in a simple way because you get people that, oh, I'll only do Caribou. I'll only do,
Sure.
what's the difference? I mean,
Yeah.
is there a difference? Is it,
So,
you know,
so when you get to those really large scale, because I mean, anytime you get to a chain, right, you're getting to a chain level, you're going to be more about consistency than anything. You don't have as much room to experiment because you want the Route 54 or the Starbucks in Arkansas to taste the same as the Route 54 or the Starbucks in Wisconsin that you go to. And so you need them all to be really consistent. You do have a scale though. Starbucks tries at least to buy a little bit better coffee than baseline, but a lot of your Dunkin' Donuts and so I've not tried all of them. Dunkin' Donuts and Scooters are pretty notable. They're buying pretty cheap coffee. They're not made to be consumed for the flavor of the coffee. They're not intended to be drunk black. They're made to have milk and sweetener put into them. That is
A
that is
quick trip.
yeah, it's a fun drink. They want you to buy a big drink that is predominantly milk or sugar, and so they're trying to make coffee that doesn't have too much of its own flavor because they want to add the flavor later. That's a great way to be consistent with it. The smaller you get, the more likely you are that you're going to be using better beans that you're trying to get the flavor out of that particular bean to be had black or with a little bit of milk or something like that. But yeah, it is a lot of those. You're not going to be able to tell the difference that much as opposed to like what type of milk or sweetener they're using. But you'll tell a little bit of a variety. Starbucks is kind of on the better end of commodity coffee, but some of them, yeah, if you get a vanilla latte, they're kind of the same everywhere, save for the sweetener they're using. But they're not buying the best, they're not buying the worst. They're just kind of buying what they can, and they're trying to mask it a little bit. Just something not offensive is what they're going for.
I would not, on a recorded line, I would not shop at Starbucks because of their politics and labor and all of that. So that's what even
Yeah,
though I had a neighbor who used to work there and she got a pound of free coffee a week or something, and she always brought it to my house. And at the time I was not drinking coffee, so I just shoved it in the freezer. And
it's really interesting. I don't personally like the flavor of Starbucks. It's not something they're a little too dark for me. They're a little too roasty. But
Mhm.
I did hear when we were talking with some of our farmers in Costa Rica, they have a lot of stories of some of the biggest buyers coming in from Nestle or Starbucks or whatever, and they have really negative things to say about some people, but they spoke relatively positively about Starbucks as far as what if they have a purchase relationship with a farmer and they lose their crop, they will still honor that sale oftentimes, and they'll still pay them their full contract for less of a
Mhm.
crop potentially to maintain the relationship, which is really that,
That's
that
good.
that stuck with me a little. That's at least a pie. I'm always searching for some sort of a positive on some of these bigger companies because I generally don't think super highly of what they put out, but that gave me a little something to go off of.
Hmm,
Another
hmm.
thing you'll
Good to
notice with
know.
Yeah, another thing you'll notice with a lot of those bigger coffees shops too is they focus on blends as opposed to single origin coffees. And so a blend means that you're taking different coffees from different parts of the world and you're mixing them together to get a specific flavor profile. And that just allows them to be able to make that throughout the year. You shouldn't have a single coffee throughout the whole year because it's harvested once. Coffee is harvested once throughout the year from all of these regions, and it differs from African coffee or Ethiopian coffee versus Central and South American coffee. So you should only be buying and having that available for a few months of the year. But you'll notice a lot of these blends stay throughout the entire year. And how is that? Well, they're switching out the coffees that they're using for the blend so it'll be slightly different, but you can kind of get a similar middle ground of a roast profile with them. Whereas a single origin, you're trying to get maybe a little bit more unique of a flavor from that, which is kind of interesting. And that gives you, as a small roaster, a little bit more room to be creative and go that route. So yeah, how does the actual coffee get to us? We have fair trade, we have direct trade. Oftentimes we use importers, but you can go direct to the farmer. That's the best. No one's taking out a cut from the middle. Importers are great in connecting you with coffees across the world, but they're taking a cut, so you're paying a larger amount, and the farmer will likely receive less. But if you can establish a direct trade relationship with these farmers, they are getting all the money that you're paying them. So it's better for them, better for us. We try to do direct trade as much as we can. It's not always possible, but as much as we can, we try to do direct trade with farmers that we've maintained relationships with over the last, 10 years or so. You'll also see organic beans everywhere. We try to buy organic. It is really hard to be an organic coffee roaster, especially if you're small like us. Not only do you have to buy organically grown coffee beans, which is the hard part. That's already in itself difficult. The farm needs to be certified, but not only do they need to be certified, you as a roaster need to be certified organic, even though we are not adding anything into the coffee to roast it. So, we try to buy, we are not an organic coffee roaster by name, but we do try to buy organic coffee beans as much as we possibly can and try to put that out. It just means that we're not using harsh chemicals in the growing process. It means that everything is weeded by hand. You're not trying to lace it in medicinal pesticides to prevent anything. They're trying to use good growing practices, planting a banana tree in front of a bushel of coffee plants to protect it from the wind, stuff like that, as opposed to loading up on chemicals. But there are a lot of farms as well that use organic practices but are not certified organic. In Ethiopia, almost all of the coffee is organic. They don't have a lot of the same bug problems that we will see in Central America. So oftentimes the pesticides are expensive. They're not going to buy them unnecessarily and lace it onto the coffee plants. So although they're almost all organic, they're not labeled as organic because that costs more money to get it certified. So eventually, we'll get to the roasting part where we import the coffee through an importer or via direct trade, and then our job as the roaster is to highlight the innate flavor profile within the beans, like I mentioned. So we go through several tests. You'll know light. Everyone's heard light, medium, dark with roasting. But what does that mean exactly? The lighter to medium roast, you're tending to get a lot of those more fruit flavors, sometimes floral flavors that are kind of within the coffee itself. The darker you get on the roast scale, oftentimes we're adding what we call roasting qualities, which is like maybe a smokier flavor to the coffee. You'll taste a little bit more of that smoky nuttiness to it, and that is because the coffee itself is burning a little bit. We are essentially cooking coffee as roasters. That is what we are doing. We're roasting it, we're cooking it. And if you go a little on the dark side, you're going to taste more of that char as opposed to what the bean was intended to. So again, that's when you're going to see a lot of your Starbucks, your Caribous, your Dunkin', stuff like that. The darker they go, the less likely you are to taste the flavor of the actual bean itself, and that is a highlight to them because that it lends itself well to consistency. It's really easy to go a little bit darker. I won't bore you with the details of the roasting process in terms of temperatures and stuff like that. That's its own little geeky world that I won't bore you with. But if you have any questions about it, happy to answer it.
So
But
are
yeah,
you saying roasting it too dark camouflages the flavor?
generally speaking, yes. Some coffees, and you can go a little dark. You like a touch dark, and that can complement certain coffees if they already have like a natural chocolatiness or nuttiness to the coffee. Going just a little over medium is going to be good. But if you just scorch it, then yeah, you're masking the bean flavor itself, and you're kind of toasting it. Think
Because
about.
I never liked coffee because, especially French coffee, it was way too acidic for us, you know?
Yeah, and it can be, and some of that could be brew method as well. But you can get some coffees that are on the higher or lower acidity scale.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, if you use a filtered approach, it's going to be a little bit easier to consume if acidity is an issue.
Hmm.
French press is a little bit harder. Espresso is going to be a little bit harder, but your pour overs and stuff like that might be a little bit easier to take in. Um, yeah, I think I kind of hit most of my,
Nice.
major talking points. Does anyone have any questions? Anything else that I didn't have, or do you want me to expand upon, or anything like that?
So you said this is the first of three. What can you kind of just give an overview of what the other two?
Sure. Yeah. So I had one more officially kind of laid out, and that's going to be kind of a like a mastered home brewing kind of overview. So we're going to go into how to make your home brewing process better, how to make cold brew, what you can do at home to make the quality of your drink a little bit better, from grinding to grind size, brewing methods, water temperature, techniques, various things like that, so you can kind of make closer to cafe quality coffee at home. That was the only other one I had planned, but I've got plenty of stuff for a third one. A third one
I
is
have a third one. Actually, it's a nurse dietitian, and she will be talking about the wellness of coffee, because first they said, yeah, coffee is not good. It's bad for your heart, and it increases your blood pressure and this and that. And lately it's changing. Lately, coffee is one of those superfoods. So
yeah.
she will be talking about it, because it has been studied recently, and there are a lot of studies of health benefits of coffee. So this is what the third part is.
Oh, that'll be interesting because yeah, I grew up where it was always, I mean, my whole family drank coffee, but it was always, as bad for you as alcohol or pop, you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
didn't drink it and everything. And then they've changed they've changed that dialogue.
Philosophy, yeah, yeah, or
Now it's
dialogue,
good
yeah,
for you.
yeah.
And
It's
But
and
I
been
I
the
don't
says,
most
have I don't drink coffee. I don't have a taste for coffee, and even the aroma, because I grew up around it, and they always said it was bad. So, but the other question I have on the next one that you do, will you talk about my son-in-law? We were at a restaurant and he ordered coffee and it came in a coffee press,
Oh, sure. Yeah, like a French
a
press.
coffee press.
Sure.
I'm clueless again, so I'm going back to, I'm the old,
It's really funny. I've got one on the counter right
you
here.
had an old percolator that you had on the stove, kind of thing. So,
So similar to this guy.
yeah, it was metal. It was a
Yeah.
metal one that,
So,
yeah.
so the idea with that is it is a steeping method. So we'll get more into it on the next one, but it's super easy. You were just grinding coffee and you were putting it into this little container, and then you pour the water in and into it with it, and you let it sit for generally 4 to 6 minutes, something like that. And then you're just pressing the coffee down and pouring it out. It replaces the need for a filter. Normally, it's going to get less of a sharp flavor. You're not going to get quite as much of a punchy flavor because it's steeping, so the water temperature is going to decrease the longer it steeps. But yeah, it's one method of brewing that some people like. It's gotten a little less popular over the years, but some people still really like it.
Yeah, I drink tea, especially like hot tea, green tea, things like that.
Yeah,
So I'm very much on tea, not
totally.
as much on the the coffee. So
Well, maybe
it's a learning curve.
I was exactly the same way. Sorry, I was exactly the same way until, as I said, I bought many different kinds, my husband and I, and we tasted it. It really, the temperature of the water, the same with tea, can totally ruin it, or if you oversteep tea. So maybe you will find the right type of coffee and you will like it, Terry,
I,
you know?
I'm always convinced that everyone's just not had the right coffee yet, but that's I'm biased, so who
Yeah,
knows?
that's what I was going to say. Yep, yep, yep.
I'm sure that is mine.
So are there any other questions around?
Ours was always the Folgers in your cup.
I know,
Oh,
I know.
the best marketing jingle of all time in the 90s. It was,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right, Zach, this was great. Thank you so much and see you next month.
yeah, thank you so much,
All
guys.
right.
Have a good
Okay,
day.
thank you. Bye bye.